our principal oboist, Fatma Daglar. Welcome, Fatma.
Thank you. Thank you so much for having me. It's so great to see you, Angel.
Wonderful. It's great. We miss so much rehearsals and performances. So hopefully we will be back to, reality soon. So why don't we start the conversation going back to when you were a kid and you started thinking about music. So in your case, why music? And why specifically the oboe? Tell us about that.
Sure. So why music? I actually did grow up in a family of musicians, not my immediate family, but on my mom's side, my uncle is a very celebrated jazz guitarist, Berkeley trained. My aunt was a jazz singer, and they were both married to, well, my aunt was married to a jazz drummer, and my uncle was married to a jazz keyboardist, and they had their own band. So we would go hear them all the time. I know that's jazz, and I've become a classical musician, but perhaps what got me through the path to music, but also the oboe, is that my dad was a music lover, and he would always turn on the classical radio station in the mornings. And for some reason, around the time we would gather for breakfast, the Turkish classical music radio station would happen to frequently play Heinz Holliger playing some Baroque oboe concertos. So my dad was a huge fan of Heinz Holliger, the very famous Swiss oboist. So I grew up listening to that all the time. And when it was time for me to pick an instrument, there was almost no question that I would pick the oboe. And at the time I was actually attending Robert College High School. Robert College is a top ranked high school in Istanbul, and it's actually the oldest American educational institution that has been continuously serving outside the United States. So I attended Robert College, but back when I was a student, it was a middle school and a high school. So part-time, I started attending the Istanbul University Conservatory, which is on the Asian side of Istanbul, which is where my family lives still. And Robert College was on the European side because for those of you who may not know, Istanbul is actually divided by the Bosphorus Strait, and the eastern side is the Asian side and the western side is the European side. So I lived in Asia and went to Europe every day for school. And the Istanbul State Conservatory, where I started music, when I went there and said, I want to play the oboe, the professors were quite surprised because it just wasn't something they had experienced, this kid coming saying, I would like to play the oboe. And of course, I passed the musical aptitude test, whatever the talent test, and was able to attend for free. And they gave me an oboe, and that's how it kind of all started.
That's incredible. So, I'm very happy to hear that Heinz Holliger made such an imprint in you. Undoubtedly is one of the most extraordinary oboists of the past century. Also a composer, so extraordinary figure. Well, I'm fascinated, but about what I'm seeing there, that table and so many instruments behind. So we are going to have a fantastic show here. This is great. So before we go to specific excerpts of you playing, why don't you tell us about people that in your education, in your career, were influential? So people that somehow defined and made, this epiphany people that we find, some of them along our lives.
Sure, and I would have to start by mentioning my first and only oboe teacher in Istanbul. So he taught me throughout high school and college. So when I came here to Peabody, I actually came for my master's for a graduate degree, but I did my undergrad back in Istanbul with him. So Yashar Acar is his name. Wonderful man. I'm still in touch with him. And he was not only a great teacher, but also like a really warm father figure that was very engaged in the lives of his students. So it wasn't just show up for a lesson and then see you next week. Very, very engaged. And, you know, I kind of see that in my own teaching now. And that is, you know, just continue to have a dialogue and just be curious about my students' lives and what else may be going on. And I know especially now there's just so much they struggle with, and try to have the oboe as this continuous presence in their lives that they can turn to. And you know, my teacher, so Yashar Acar, he had very high standards, but he would always say, Fatma, first and foremost, you have to be a good person.
Beautiful.
You have to be a good person. And he always cultivated that compassion that has really stayed with me, I think. So he is certainly one. And when I was in high school and I was studying with him, I was actually an intern for the Istanbul Festival. And back then, the Istanbul Festival encompassed jazz and traditional music, but of course, all, you know, classical music recitals, all the way to opera. You know, in the Topkapı Palace every year, they staged Abduction from the Seraglio. So anyway, I was an intern and I got to meet so many world-class performers. I mean, I almost lived with them for an entire month. So I think that was also a great influence on me, and just wanting to be one of them. And then I came to Peabody and studied with Sarah Watkins, who used to be the principal oboist of National Symphony. And she was just magnificent, such an inspiring, wonderful musician. So I really am indebted to them.
Absolutely. Well, you know what people might not know is that oboists are also artisans. They create and they build their own reeds, which is, to me, has been always fascinating. You know, when I'm around the orchestra in the rehearsals and I see everybody, like, you know, in a workshop, I love that. Fatma, tell us a little bit about that, about your artisan work.
Sure, you probably see us messing with our, you know, you probably see me with a knife in my hand, scraping my reed at the breaks. Exactly. And we're always the ones who show up early to make sure we get acclimated to the temperature and the humidity, so we can have time to adjust our reeds before each rehearsal and each concert. So yes, this is something every oboe player learns along with playing the oboe. So it really is inherently a double major. You have to learn to play the oboe, but then you also have to learn to make reeds. Right now, of course, you could purchase reeds, but to make it to your own liking, it's just such a personal endeavor to actually make your own reeds. So almost every single professional oboe player I know makes their own reeds. So I'll show you, I have bags, of course, of cane. Usually it comes from southern France. A lot of times this cane comes from good wine regions, and it just looks like a typical piece of bamboo cane. It's a particular species of bamboo called Arundodonx, and this becomes this.
Wow.
Yes. So we have a gouging machine. So first of all, we have to split the cane. Let me show you a piece of split cane. I won't bother you with too many details, but just walk you through a few of the details. So here's the tube cane, and then here it is split, just a piece. And then this gouging machine here actually has a guillotine that cuts it to size. And then you put the cane in this bed and you gouge it to a certain thickness. And to measure that, we have a micrometer, and we measure the thickness of a cane in microns, which is 1,000th of a millimeter.
Unbelievable.
So the precision is really extremely important. And then it goes, it's after it's gouged, it's shaped and folded in half. So then there's this piece, which then gets tied onto a tube, this piece of cork with thread. And then I have all these knives with which I scrape until it plays a certain pitch. And that's the sound of the oboe reed. So once you attach it to the oboe, then we can play. And I'll show you real quick. Here is the modern oboe, of course. I have a Loré, an instrument made in Paris that I actually picked in Paris. I love it. But here's what the oboe looked like 300 years before this. So this is the modern oboe. This is the Baroque oboe, which I also play. And it has, of course, undergone this huge evolution with not only the wood getting a lot denser, and I mean, the wood that is now picked to make modern oboes is a denser, harder wood so that it can project more, of course, in these big halls. But of course, all the keys that got added, and this just weighs a ton, when this can be a lot lighter and it's just a lot easier to play the music of the period. So even now, even when we have this, behemoth of this monster instrument, with period music, the consensus is if you can play it on the period instrument, it's so much better because you can also very clearly hear the articulations and really just get the right style and the right sound.
Fantastic, Fatma. So I know that everybody can't wait to listen to your playing. So why don't we, while Jaron is preparing the first clip, you give us an introduction. So what are we going to listen?
Sure.
First?
And actually, our first clip is going to be played on the Baroque oboe. And this is the Ich habe genug, the first aria from the cantata by Bach, cantata 82. And it has a beautiful oboe obligato with a baritone soloist. And this was sort of my first pandemic project because at the height of the lockdown, we were not able to play with each other. So this baritone friend of mine, and I worked with him at Washington Bach Consort, and we also teach together at Towson University. He said, can we try to do this remotely? So the organist recorded, and then I recorded, and then the singer recorded, and we put it all together. So this is Ich habe genug, just a clip of that performance, or the little recording.
Wow, that was incredible, Fatma. Bravissimo.
Thank you. Thank you.
Wow. You picked my favorite area from Bach. And as you said, there is no way you can be a bad person and play this music. You have to be a very good person. No, no.
Oh, thank you.
Oh my goodness. You have to be the best. And the way you play it, I mean, those pianos, it is incredible. Bravissimo.
Thank you so much.
All right, let's continue. So you are, of course, you have a fantastic career as a soloist, as a chamber musician. You are part of a phenomenal woodwind quintet. And of course, you are, you like and you love actually playing in orchestra as a principal oboist. Tell us about that, about the differences. And then I have a question for you that probably many people want to know is why you are the first person in the orchestra that starts the whole thing giving the A. Everybody's envious of you because everybody suddenly shut up and then is the oboe there. Why is that?
So the tradition is that if there's an oboe present, the oboe is the one who gives the A. But of course, if there's a keyboard, we have to make sure to check with the keyboard because no matter how inflexible we are, the keyboard is absolutely impossible to retune at the last second. So the main reason why the oboe gives the A is that, first of all, the oboe is not a cylindrical instrument, it's a conical instrument. Mm-hmm. So it actually is a lot narrower here than it is at the bottom. But if you think of the flute or the clarinet, those are absolutely cylindrical. And the clarinet, of course, has a bell, the flaring bell, but the rest of it is cylindrical. So they can pull in and push out to adjust their pitch. String players, of course, can adjust the pitch. Once we have our reed made, and once it's put in, we are set. So because it's conical, if I pull out the reed at all, it starts making certain intervals wider and certain intervals stay where they are. So it actually becomes very out of tune with itself. So the stability is something we work towards when we make our reeds back at home. So when we show up at a rehearsal or a concert, we are set at 440 or 442, whatever the standard is. So that's one reason why the oboe gives the A, because it's supposed to be very stable pitch-wise. Secondly, of course, the timbre of the oboe is one that you can really hear because it cuts through the orchestra because of its very rich harmonics in the sound. So everybody can really tune into the core of the pitch and get the note that they're trying to tune to. Also, the strings have the A, so why A? Every string instrument has an A, I believe. So it's one that is just agreed upon. And yes, as far as the difference between orchestral work and chamber work, I also would like to add that I play a lot of opera. Playing in an opera orchestra, I would consider that an entirely different category because it really requires a lot of focus and concentration just because of the length of it. But also it asks the instrumentalists to be very flexible because we have to accommodate the singers. So even though I don't have one opera job, I play with the Wolf Trap Opera in the summers, Washington Concert Opera, Maryland Lyric Opera, Annapolis Opera. So I actually play a lot of opera and I love it. I enjoy it so much. So that is one thing I love to do. Symphonic playing, orchestral playing, that's kind of my default mode. I do it all the time and I'm just super comfortable at it. And chamber music, my quintet, it's a fantastic group. I'm really proud to be a part of it. Of course, that involves traveling and I have to always factor that in. And solo work is rare. And with solo work, you know, I try to memorize, but I also have to just keep in mind, oh my gosh, what am I gonna wear? So that because, you know, you're at the forefront, but I can be in a very comfortable black when I'm buried at the back of the orchestra or in a pit. So that's another consideration.
Wonderful. So let's go to the second musical excerpt. Why don't you tell us about what we are going to listen to and the other instrument that you are going to use, etc.
Sure. So the second clip is more recent than the first one because we were all getting so antsy playing from our living rooms. So this soprano and I actually talked about getting together and keeping our distance in a church. And I really wanted to go and do this at Brown Memorial Church in Baltimore, which has all these Tiffany windows and it's got this spectacular Skinner organ. And the organist there is a friend of mine, Michael Britt. And it's another Bach aria, but this time it's on a modern instrument and it's on the modern oboe d'amore. So it's got this bulbous bell, it's got the tiny little bocal, which the reed gets attached to. So the oboe d'amore is an instrument in A, the oboe is in C, the oboe d'amore is in A, and the English horn, the biggest one, is in F, which will actually be featured in the next clip. So this is Ich nehme mein Leiden mit Freuden auf mich, this aria from Cantata 75.
Bravo.
Thank you. Thank you so much. That was only our second
Fantastic.
take.
Wow. Very, very impressive.
Yes, we were
Very
just so
impressive.
thirsty for trying to make music together. So
Wonderful. So Michelle tells me that we are already having some questions for you. So let's keep moving. And then the next thing I wanted to talk with you is your first performance with Post Classical Ensemble was in the spring of 2008. I remember vividly. That's a program. It was a beautiful program called Artist in Exile, and you were part of Kurt Weill's Whitman songs. And I remember vividly that first rehearsal when you started playing. I said, "Wow, what
oh.
what a wonderful sound! What a beautiful! It's so musical." And I immediately during the intermission, I went to our personnel manager. I said, "We want Fatma back."
Oh,
So
thank
here you
you.
are, several
Thank
years later. So tell us, I mean, from you have been performing with us many, many different programs. Eh, Tell us about one of the programs that resonates more with you, that made a more profound, that touched you more than others.
May I say that every single one has resonated with me?
Yay!
Every single one, because it would be so difficult for me to pick a single one, because when I play with Post Classical Ensemble, every concert is part of a larger project that brings together these interdisciplinary works of art, and it's just a total presentation, and it makes you want to learn more. It makes me want to learn more, and there's always the confluence of music with history, and I really have found every single one. I mean, first of all, I played those two um, silent movies, Redes being one, of which we got a beautifully produced DVD. Each of us got one, and that's by Revueltas. I did not know about New Babylon, the Shostakovich score. Fantastic
Fantastic.
music. And I mean, thinking back, Hiawatha melodrama, Dvorak in America, the Grand Partita we did with the dancers at the Shakespeare Theater. More recently, the Lou Harrison piano concerto, where
What a
we were in
piece.
the, yes, and we were in the middle of the National Cathedral, the nave of the National Cathedral, and we were sandwiched with a Javanese gamelan ensemble on one side and the Balinese gamelan ensemble on the other. Like, who else does that? No one else does that. So I really
No one
am,
else. No
no one
one
else.
else.
And
Only us.
this is not a paid advertisement. I really congratulate you and Joe for this very amazing visionary and creative programming. So every single one, I can't pick out a single one, but we can talk about the next clip, which is from one of the
Wonderful.
Post Classical Ensemble concerts.
Beautiful. Tell us about that. What are we
Yes,
going to
so
listen?
that was a Copeland retrospective at the Phillips Collection, and there were all these paintings of urban landscapes that were hanging at the Phillips Collection Music Room, and I played at the Quiet City, and that is played on the English horn, and that's a piece for English horn in F, the biggest oboe that I have, the tenor oboe, with trumpet. So it's a piece for English horn, trumpet, and strings.
Wonderful. So let's listen then to Quiet City. Bravo, Fatma.
Thank you.
That was a beautiful program at the Philips, which has also, you know, this intimacy in that room is so beautiful. I remember Laura Johnson played the piano variations, and then we showed the documentary of the CD, and then we played that with you. Tim White was the trumpet player, and
Yes.
this incredible picture by Tom Wolfe, our amazing photographer, with this beautiful Greco on the left. Did you see that? Greco looking at us like, what are these guys doing? It was,
Right.
what a phenomenal picture. And then an image of the city over there. Well, Fatma, you're amazing. You understand why we loved you. And now everybody understands why
Oh
we
my
love
gosh.
you.
I love you. I always love working with you. So I really miss it.
So
Angel,
before we go to the, I know we can you have one last question before we go to the audience,
okay.
which is, what are your other passions, Fatma? What is, besides music, what do you love to do?
Sure. I do love to read, and of course, being stuck at home gave me all this time to read. I love to read history. I'm really interested in history, so I could have studied history. I actually did study political science in Istanbul, yes, but I did drop it after, and because I did want to focus on music full time. But yes, so I love reading history, but I also have studied, Turkish is my mother tongue, and I love reading in English, but I also read in French and in Italian because I've studied those languages. And now I am actually taking lessons over Skype with a French teacher in Europe and an Italian teacher in Europe, so that I can maintain my conversation skills and also understand better what I'm reading. And I've also studied some German and some Spanish. I try to improve them as well. So I would say languages are also my passion.
Wonderful, wonderful. So, Michelle, should we open the microphone to our wonderful audience?
We certainly can, but I would like to go ahead and start with a few questions that some of the audience members have already sent to me.
Fantastic.
And so I've got a number of them, and I'd love to get to all of them if we can.
Sure.
But I am mindful to everybody's time. But anyways, the first question is a very technical question, and I love it. It says, Fatma, what is your yield on reeds? How many do you make that you can actually use?
Well, that's a really good question. Excellent question. So I usually set off trying to make 10 reeds. And from those 10, I would say I can play on them all. They all turn out sort of decent. It didn't used to be that way. I used to be able to only play on 1 out of 10. So I've developed my skill over time. But now I think for a concert, like a concert level reed, I could make 3 or 4 out of those 10, and the others are good enough to practice on.
Fantastic. That is very interesting. So I suppose you also have to practice making them. Like you said, you're practicing the instrument, but you're also practicing the technique of making them.
And here's one other trivia about oboe players. I spend more time making reeds than practicing.
My goodness.
Absolutely.
Well,
and I also have to separate the reeds that will be good enough for the concert so I don't wear them out, because they are so incredibly thin that they do not last. They don't last more than a few days. So I have to parse them out and only designate practice reeds and the ones that will be used just for concerts.
Fantastic. Thank you for that answer. More questions. Are there any Turkish works for oboe, and have you played them? And then there was a follow-up question, which is your favorite oboe concerto or chamber music with oboes? So two sort of questions.
Yes, there is plenty of really great Turkish music written for oboe. I have worked on some, not enough, I feel bad to say, but I do have them, and maybe, this actually gives me an idea of pulling them out and revisiting those. But there is several, and but I have not performed them, unfortunately. It's the kind of thing that even back in Istanbul, we were always, studying Bach and Handel and Vivaldi and Albinoni and Mozart. And then, you know, the Romantic period is all orchestral. So then it's mostly orchestral repertoire and the excerpts. And then of course the more recent concertos written for the oboe. I would say maybe the Richard Strauss might be my my most favorite concerto, and I did get to play it with the Istanbul Symphony. I got to play it here as well with the Maryland Symphony Orchestra. So if I had to pick one, I would probably pick Richard Strauss.
Well, I have another related question. Somebody mentioned that the English horn is their favorite instrument, and Quiet City is one of my favorite pieces. Yay. What other English horn pieces or excerpts are on your favorite list, Fatma?
Of course there is, we mentioned Dvorak earlier, the Hiawatha melodrama that employed the symphony, Dvorak Symphony from the New World, which is so well known for its English horn melody in the slow movement. Da, 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 which was then ascribed the words going home. So that would probably be my favorite. And now it really resonates because I haven't been able to go home all these months. So it's really difficult for me to play that without shedding tears.
Of course. Angel, what do you think? Do we have time for one more question?
Sure. Yes. We have. Yeah.
Let's do one more question that I've got from the audience that
Okay.
they have
Wonderful.
written to me. It's a little bit of a technical question. We've got a very technical group here. And we have a dog in the background. That's that's wonderful.
That's great.
It's fine. We love pets. Someone wrote, as I understand it, there are multiple schools of oboe playing around the world, different key systems, etc. In your travels and playing, do you ever find it difficult to play with a different concept? Do you ever find it difficult to play with a different sound concept?
That's actually a very interesting question. And I should mention that I consider myself a hybrid player because my teacher in Istanbul had studied with a German oboist. And I played on a fully automatic oboe until I came to Peabody. So again, because the audience is so technical, I can get into this. So this more standard oboe played in North America is what's called a semi-automatic. I know it sounds like we're talking about rifles here. But the fully automatic oboe does not have this side octave key. And that's another system sort of preferred in Europe. So for me, it took almost a year to get used to the side octave for, and it only employs a few notes. So that's one thing I had to get adjusted, but the side octave gives us harmonics. So it may cause an impediment with technique, but it also gives us the harmonics that the fully automatic oboe does not have. Also, especially about reeds, I was playing on what we call a short scrape reed, German reed, which has a wire around it. And then the American oboe reed style is very different. So I had to learn both. And then I kind of developed my own, after having learned both schools of reed making. And I think that shaped my sound as well, because I still have that German sound kind of instilled in me and my ears. So I still kind of look for that heavier sound a little bit. But now, of course, I live and work here in the United States, so I have to adjust to the way the orchestras play here. So yes, sometimes it is a bit of an adjustment it takes. And yeah, depending on who has studied with what teacher and where and which geography, the oboe still has not completely reached a consensus globally. There are still varying styles.
Fatma, this has just been phenomenal. Thank you so much for
You're
sharing
so
all of this
welcome.
with you.
Thank
And
you.
our
Thank you.
audience, I can't tell you, our audience is just writing in saying just what a beautiful sound you have. So whatever you're doing it
Oh,
right.
thank you.
And I think with that, I want to turn it back over to Angel for a few closing words.
Fatma, thank you so much. It is such a privilege to have you with us playing. I can't wait to have you back in live performances. I announced it the last time that we are really hoping to go back with a Haydn festival in May. So we will have you there playing some Haydn symphonies from the, the early symphonies, the Sturm und Drang
Ah,
symphonies,
fantastic.
hopefully. And thank you so much. And then for our audience, thank you. It's great to see so happy faces. And please join us with our next guest, also a dear friend of all of us, including Fatma, the phenomenal trumpet player, our principal trumpet player, Chris Gecker, will be with us on November 12th. So thank you, everybody. Fatma, a million thanks again. And I hope to see you soon.
Thank you so much. I hope to see everybody soon. Bye-bye.